Cole rode alone across the jagged crimson plains of the distant desert planet, his horse's hooves kicking up clouds of red dust that shimmered in the twin suns above. He had been riding for days, his wide-brimmed hat shielding his eyes from the harsh glare and the wind cutting across his face like tiny knives. Humans were few on this planet, scattered across isolated homesteads and small colonies. Most of them lived by their wits, relying on survival skills that could rival the best soldiers back on Earth. Cole had grown up that way. He had learned to trust only himself and the horse that carried him across unforgiving terrain. The desert was quiet, almost painfully so. Only the distant cries of alien birds and the occasional whistle of the wind through the jagged cliffs broke the silence. Cole's sharp eyes scanned the horizon, always alert for trouble. He had been living on the edge of civilization long enough to know that danger could come from anywhere. Wild beasts, alien scavengers, or even the treacherous terrain itself. Then without warning he saw movement near the cliffside river that cut through the canyon below. At first he thought it was a mirage. The heat of the twin suns made the water shimmer in strange ways. But then he saw her. A woman. Her figure, twisting and thrashing against the current, struggling to stay above water. Her skin had a faint glowing pattern, unlike anything he had ever seen. She was an Apache woman from a distant alien colony, a species known for their agility, intelligence, and unbreakable spirit. Cole didn't hesitate. He swung his leg over the saddle and jumped into the rocky riverbank, his boots slipping against wet stones. The water was icy cold, far stronger than it appeared from above, but he plunged in without a second thought. He swam toward her, fighting the current with all his strength. The river tugged at him, trying to pull him downstream, but he reached out and grabbed her arm. She was unconscious, limp against the water's pull. "Hold on," Cole shouted, though he knew she could not hear him. He gritted his teeth and kicked against the riverbed, dragging her toward the shallower water near the edge. Each step was a battle. The river tried to drag him under, but his determination was stronger than the current. He finally reached the bank, collapsing onto the wet sand with her in his arms. Water streamed down his face, mixing with the dust and sweat of his journey. He checked her breathing. It was faint. Without thinking, he pressed his hands to her chest and began CPR, remembering the techniques he had learned from his father back on Earth. He could not afford to make mistakes. The woman's body was different. From humans, yes, but the principles were the same. Press, release, repeat. His arms ached, his lungs burned, but he refused to stop. He would not let her die on his watch. Minutes passed like hours, and then a cough escaped her lips. She gasped for air, sputtering and shivering. Cole pulled back, letting her breathe. The woman's eyes opened wide and startled, and she tried to sit up. Cole steadied her, putting a firm hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now," he said gently. "You're safe." Her voice was weak, but she whispered something in her own language. Cole shook his head. "I don't understand, but it's okay. You're alive. That's what matters." She looked at him with a mixture of gratitude and something he could not quite name. Something deep, ancient, almost like a bond forming between them. Cole felt it too, though he did not understand why. He tried to ignore it, focusing on the practical, getting her to shelter, drying her clothes, and keeping her warm. By the time the suns began to set, the desert was bathed in a surreal orange glow. Cole had managed to build a small fire, using dried alien wood he had collected during the day. He wrapped the woman in a blanket he had in his saddlebag and sat beside her, watching the flames dance and listening to the soft hiss of the fire. "You saved my life," she finally said, her voice stronger now, though still trembling. Cole shrugged, pretending it was nothing. "I do what I can," he said. "But you're alive. That's enough." She reached out and touched his hand lightly, and he felt a strange warmth run through him. It was not physical. It was something deeper, something he had never felt before. He glanced at her, noticing for the first time the faint glow of her markings against her skin, like constellations in the night sky. I must stay near you," she said, her words deliberate but soft. Cole frowned. Near me? Why? She shook her head. It is tradition. My people, when one is saved from death, a bond is made. The one who saves must remain near. It is sacred. Cole felt a knot in his stomach. He had heard of alien rituals before, stories of humans unintentionally getting caught in them. This was not just gratitude. This was something that could change his life forever. He opened his mouth to speak, but she smiled faintly, and he realized arguing was pointless. The bond had already begun. For the rest of the night, they sat by the fire, sharing silence more than words. Cole tried to stay alert, scanning the horizon for any threats while the woman, Ayana, rested and recovered. The desert night was cold, and the twin moons cast a silver glow over the cliffs and river. He wondered what dangers tomorrow might bring, but for the first time in a long time he did not feel completely alone. In the early hours of the morning, Cole woke to the sound of Ayana moving beside him. She was observing the desert, her eyes sharp, her body alert. She was studying the landscape, identifying threats and resources with the precision of a skilled hunter. Cole watched her quietly, impressed. She was extraordinary and yet vulnerable. The very combination that had compelled him to save her in the first place. I am ready to move, she said finally. Cole nodded. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult. The desert was unforgiving, and they were far from any human settlement. But he also knew he could not abandon her. The bond, strange as it was, meant he had a duty to keep her safe. As they rode together, Cole noticed small changes in himself. His senses were sharper, his instincts quicker. He reacted to dangers more quickly, and his reflexes seemed to anticipate threats before they appeared. At first, he dismissed it as adrenaline, but the effect persisted. He began to suspect that the bond with Ayana was more than just tradition. It was changing him, connecting him in ways he did not fully understand. The days passed with small challenges, treacherous cliffs, sudden sandstorms, and alien predators that roamed the plains. Each time, Cole and Ayana worked together seamlessly. She taught him techniques that were entirely new to him. How to read the desert winds, how to spot dangerous creatures before they struck, and how to survive in the harshest conditions. He was learning from her as much as she was relying on him. One evening, as they rested atop a ridge overlooking a wide canyon, Ayana spoke again. You do not know the full consequences of saving me, she said softly. My people, we do not take life lightly. When one is saved, the bond carries responsibility, protection, loyalty, respect. It is not something to ignore. Cole stared at her, feeling the weight of her words. I only saved you because you needed it, he said. I didn't know this would happen. She smiled faintly, a mixture of amusement and seriousness. Many humans do not understand. But the bond is real. It will shape what comes next. Cole thought about that as the twin moons rose above the canyon, casting silver light across the desert. He did not fully understand the bond, and he could not predict what consequences lay ahead. All he knew was that he had saved a life, and now that life was intertwined with his own in ways he could not yet see. As the night deepened, Cole felt an unfamiliar sense of purpose. For the first time in years, he was not riding alone. He had a companion, someone who trusted him and whose life depended on his skills and instincts. He had saved her, yes, but he realized that in doing so, he had also saved himself. From isolation, from complacency, and from the quiet despair of endless days spent alone in the desert. He did not know what the future held. Alien factions, hidden dangers, and the unpredictable desert could all test their bond. But he also knew one thing with absolute certainty. He would protect her. Whatever the consequences, he would not let the desert claim her life again. The bond was real, and it had already begun to shape both their fates. Cole lay down beside the fire, Ayana resting against a rock nearby, and let his mind drift. Tomorrow would bring challenges, but for now, he allowed himself a moment of peace. The desert was still. The twin moons reflected in the river below, and for the first time he felt that saving someone else's life had given him more than he could have ever expected. And in that quiet, under the alien stars, he did not yet realize that the bond he had formed would change everything. His journey was only beginning, and the consequences of that single act of bravery would ripple through his life in ways he could never have imagined. The desert morning arrived with a harsh glare from the twin suns, casting long shadows across the jagged cliffs. Cole and Ayanna had been traveling together for days now, navigating treacherous terrain and learning to rely on one another. The bond between them, forged in the life-saving moment at the river, had grown stronger, though Cole still did not fully understand its depth. As they rode along a narrow canyon path, Ayanna's eyes scanned the horizon constantly. Her sharp senses seemed to detect dangers before Cole could even sense them. "There is movement ahead," she said quietly, pointing to a ridge where dust was rising in unnatural patterns. Cole squinted, trying to make out what she was seeing. A group of alien riders, armed and armored, appeared on the ridge, their weapons glinting in the sunlight. Cole felt a twinge of worry. These were not travelers, they were hunters, possibly mercenaries from a rival faction who had been searching for Ayanna. He tightened his grip on the reins. "We need to move fast," he said. Ayanna nodded, her expression serious. "Follow me. I know a route that can keep us hidden." She led him through a series of narrow paths and steep slopes that Cole never would have thought to take. The alien hunters followed at first, but the terrain slowed them down. Cole realized how skilled Ayanna truly was. She knew the desert like no one else, every rock and ridge memorized and ready to be used to their advantage. They finally reached a hidden valley, a small oasis with thick vegetation and a crystal-clear pool. Ayanna paused to catch her breath, and Cole did the same. "We're safe. For now," she said, though her eyes never stopped scanning the horizon. Cole nodded, understanding that danger was never far on this planet. As they rested, Ayanna began to explain more about the bond between them. "When someone saves an Apache woman from death, it is not just an act of kindness," she said. "It is a connection that cannot be broken easily. The bond requires loyalty, protection, and respect. You are now a part of that. You may not feel it yet, but it is real." Cole listened, trying to process her words. He had never encountered anything like this before. "So I'm stuck with you?" he asked, trying to make light of the situation. Ayanna gave him a small smile, not unkind but firm. "It is not about choice. It is about responsibility, and you will see soon enough that it is more than a burden. It can be strength." Cole considered her words as he gazed out over the oasis. He realized that saving her life had changed more than just her fate. It had changed his own. He felt sharper, more alert, and even his instincts seemed heightened when she was near. It was unsettling, but also empowering. The calm did not last long. As the suns climbed higher, they noticed movement at the far edge of the valley. Cole's hand instinctively went to his weapon, while Ayanna readied herself as well. A small group of alien hunters emerged, careful not to reveal their full numbers, but clearly intent on capturing her. Cole felt a surge of determination. He had saved her once. He would not let anyone take her now. He positioned himself between Ayanna and the attackers, his stance protective, his eyes scanning for weaknesses in their approach. "Stay close to me," he instructed. Ayanna nodded, understanding the unspoken command. The battle began without warning. Cole used the terrain to his advantage, moving swiftly along rocks and ledges to avoid attacks while striking strategically. Ayanna's agility was unmatched. She leaped, rolled, and struck with precision, disarming enemies and guiding Cole through the chaos. The two of them moved as if they were one, their bond in full effect. Hours passed in a blur of combat and strategy. By nightfall, the hunters were either incapacitated or had retreated, recognizing that capturing Ayanna was impossible without paying a high cost. Cole and Ayanna were exhausted but victorious. Cole felt a strange pride, not in himself but in the connection that had allowed them to survive together. As they made camp near the oasis, Ayanna turned to him. "You are learning," she said softly. "You are more than you were when you saved me. That is the bond. It strengthens both of us." Cole looked at her, realizing how true her words were. He could feel it. His reflexes sharper, his mind clearer, his body reacting instinctively to threats. The bond was real, and it was powerful. Over the next several days, they traveled together, facing more challenges and learning from one another. Cole taught Ayana human survival techniques, such as making traps for desert predators and navigating by the stars. Ayana taught him alien skills, how to read the desert landscape, detect hidden dangers, and move silently across the plains. Each lesson deepened their understanding of one another, and the bond grew stronger with every passing hour. One evening, as they rested on a cliff overlooking a vast canyon, Ayana spoke again. "The bond is not just about survival," she said, her voice serious. "It is about trust. You saved me when I could not save myself, and in return I trust you with my life. That trust is sacred." Cole nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He understood now that their connection was deeper than mere gratitude. It was mutual respect and reliance forged in life and death. The next challenge came unexpectedly. A violent sandstorm swept across the desert, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Cole and Ayana had to find shelter quickly, or risk being buried alive. They moved together, communicating silently through gestures and instincts honed by their bond. The storm was relentless, but they found a small cave just in time. Inside, they huddled together for warmth, the wind howling outside. Cole realized something important in that moment. Saving Ayana had changed him in ways he never expected. He was no longer just a lone cowboy wandering the desert alone. He had a companion, a purpose, and a responsibility that gave his life new meaning. He could not imagine returning to solitude now, not after everything they had shared. The storm passed, leaving the desert bathed in a soft, golden light. Cole and Ayana emerged from the cave, ready to continue their journey. They knew more dangers lay ahead, other factions seeking Ayana, harsh terrain, and the unpredictable elements of the alien world, but they also knew they could face them together. The bond that had begun at the river was now unbreakable, a source of strength and resilience. As they rode across the plains, Cole reflected on everything that had happened. Saving Ayana had been an instinctive act of courage, but the consequences had shaped both their destinies. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a protector, a partner, and a part of something greater than himself. And in that moment, under the twin suns, he understood that the bond he shared with Ayana was more than a consequence. It was a gift. Their journey continued, each day filled with new challenges and discoveries. Cole and Ayana faced dangerous predators, treacherous terrain, and rival factions, but their bond allowed them to overcome each obstacle. They learned from one another, grew stronger together, and formed a partnership that was both practical and profound. By the time they reached the edge of a large alien forest, Cole realized how much he had changed. He was sharper, faster, and more capable than he had ever been. He was no longer just a lone cowboy. He was a hero in his own right, forged through the trials of the desert and the bond with Ayana. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the forest, Cole and Ayana paused to rest. They looked at each other, understanding without words the journey they had shared and the challenges that lay ahead. The bond that had begun in a single life-saving act had grown into something powerful, unbreakable, and full of potential. Cole knew that the desert would continue to test them, that dangers would always be near, but he also knew that he was no longer alone. He had a companion, a partner, and a connection that transcended species and worlds. Saving Ayana had been just the beginning, and the consequences, once unknown, had become the foundation for something extraordinary. Together, they rode into the forest, ready to face whatever the future held. Cole understood now that the bond was not a burden. It was a gift, one that had transformed his life and would continue to shape their shared destiny. The twin suns dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the alien landscape, and for the first time in his life, Cole felt truly alive.